Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin on Sunday with our great friend, great patriot, Senator Ted Cruz. How are you?
Mark, I'm doing great. Great to be with you.
By the way, how's your re-election effort going? I know you're up. We talk about these presidential races. You've got a tough one in Texas. What's going on there?
We have a very tough fight. I'm running for re-election in 2024, and Chuck Schumer has made clear I'm his #1 target in the country. I remember last time I ran in 2018, they outspent me 3-1. It was the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. They flooded cash into Texas. They more than doubled Democrat turnout in Texas. And I ended up winning by just barely 3 points. 2.6% was the margin last time. And so my likely opponent is a very liberal Democrat congressman, has voted 100% with Nancy Pelosi. He's hard left. But he's raising money like crazy. He's raising money even faster than Beto O'Rourke did 6 years ago, and that was the most expensive Senate race that had ever happened. And so we're going to face over $100 million coming in against us. And the challenge, look, I mean, it's pretty simple. If you're a left-wing partisan, after Donald Trump, there's nobody in the country you want to beat more than me. And so these guys in New York or Chicago or San Francisco, they go give 50 or 100 bucks to whoever the guy is running against Cruz. And so we got cash coming in like crazy against us, but we're doing the hard work, and so we'll raise the money. My website is tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. So if you want to support the campaign, we need the help because we are working our tail off.
Well, I'll tell you, you've done something very, very important. You have taken the time as a senator to communicate with the American people about what's going on in this country, not only on TV and radio and your own podcast, but in a brand new book. And what's amazing about your book, Ted Cruz, Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America, that's the nub of the matter.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I went through your book. It's absolutely superb, and it's prescient in many ways. And it's this. You see what's happening in our streets, in our colleges and universities, in our media, the Democrat Party. They're all into this.
Yep.
Just to dig a little deeper, as you do in your book, there seems to me to be an overlay between this Marxist ideology and this Islamist ideology.
Absolutely.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think we're seeing it play out in real time with the war in Israel, that we are seeing our institutions, we're seeing the universities, we're seeing journalism, we're seeing government, all acting under capture and control of the hard left, of the radical Marxists. You know, with the book, I sat down to write it because, you know, many of us have had the reaction over recent years, what the hell is going on? I mean, the world has gone crazy, and what we've seen is virtually every major institution in our country has been seized by the radical left. And so I sat down in this book to explain, okay, how did that happen? Why did that happen? And importantly, what do we do to fix it? How do we fight back? And so it starts with universities. And I describe universities as the Wuhan lab of the woke virus. Universities are where it started, where it was created, where it mutated, and where it spread. And sadly, Harvard University, where I went to law school, is ground zero for this. And it started back in the 60s and 70s with just plain Jane vanilla Marxists, people who adhered to Karl Marx. As you know well, Marx viewed the world as economically determined, with an inevitable struggle between the oppressors and the victims. And for him, it was a socioeconomic frame. So the oppressors were the owners of capital, the victims were the proletariat, the workers. And the solution was a violent overthrow by the proletariat to forcibly seize the means of production from the owners of capital and to use government to redistribute it to the victims instead. And what happened, that was initially economic, but at the universities, it then shifted into cultural arenas, and they applied the same lens to race, and we got critical race theory. Same idea, the Marxist battle between oppressors and victims, this time based on race. They believe America's irredeemably racist, and the answer is to use government force and violence to take from the oppressors and give to the victims. They also use the same frame on gender and gender ideology and the extremes they've embraced there. Now, you look at what's happening in Israel. About a week ago, I was sitting down with a very successful tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, who's historically been quite left. And he was really disturbed and frankly confused why universities right now are so obviously, viciously anti-Israel, viciously anti-Semitic, why a significant chunk of the Democrat Party, the squad, the far left, is blatantly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. And he was asking why, and I said, look, the reason is simple. In their worldview, which is a Marxist worldview, Jews are coded as the oppressors. They're the bad guys. Palestinians are coded as the victims. And their answer is what's happening right now. The violent overthrow, including murder of civilians, including horrible atrocities. But to the Marxist, all of that is justified if you are murdering the people you have deemed to be the oppressors. And we've seen the interconnection. For example, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, as you know, is an explicitly Marxist organization founded by trained Marxist organizers, and they're virulently anti-Israel. They put out, Black Lives Chicago put out a tweet with an image of the paraglider saying, we stand with the Palestinians. Of course, the paraglider, they're the ones that came in and murdered hundreds of teenagers and young people just attending a concert in Israel. And this is all, if you have the hard left Marxist worldview, it explains the 19-year-old idiot at a college campus who's cheering for the death squads and not the women and children who are being slaughtered.
What accounts for, and you cover this thoroughly in the book, Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. And by the way, Amazon.com, any major bookstore, this is the exclusive first interview. The book comes out on Tuesday. Senator Cruz, what do you make of this administration, though? You have Joe Biden, who's now turned on Israel. He's making public statements so their enemies and our enemies can hear that he wants them to appease. A temporary humanitarian ceasefire means they lose. They've surrounded the enemy. They're doing everything they can to avoid civilians. No army on the face of the earth fights the way the Israelis do in terms of their humanitarianism, and yet he lectures them publicly. Isn't this because it's politics? He's worried about his vote in Michigan. He's worried about his vote in Arizona. There's enough of a population of Arabs and Muslims there, and they're turning against him. So he would throw Israel over the cliff in order to get reelected. Am I misreading this?
You know, I don't think it's driven by Dearborn, Michigan. I don't think it's driven by Muslim votes in the Democrat Party. I think it's driven by angry white liberals who hate Israel and who are Marxist and anti-Semites. This administration is captured by the far left. You look at the foreign policy of the Biden administration, it is continuing every mistake of the Obama administration, but even worse. What has Joe Biden done? In a little under 3 years, he's flowed nearly $100 billion into Iran. Iran is the leading state sponsor of terror. Iran is the patron of Hamas, the patron of Hezbollah, provides over 90% of the funding for Hamas. Not only that, the Biden administration has sent hundreds of millions of dollars into Gaza that went straight to Hamas and is, in a very literal sense, funding the death squads that are murdering Israelis and murdering Americans. And this was not only the worst attack on Israel in 50 years, it's also one of the worst terrorist attacks on America in history. 31 Americans were murdered. Roughly a dozen Americans are hostages still. And the Biden administration's immediate response, all right, so this played out in October 7th. In the early morning hours of October 7th, about 3 in the morning, the Biden State Department, the Office of Palestinian Affairs, sends out a tweet saying, we condemn Hamas's attack, but violence solves nothing and there should be no retaliatory strikes. No one should strike back. This is literally, as monsters are targeting civilians, going house to house, murdering everyone in the house simply because they're Jews. And the U.S. State Department says to Israel, do not retaliate, engage in no military response. What an asinine statement. So at 3 in the morning, my team and I, we saw that. We responded at 3 in the morning and said, this is disgraceful, and everyone who wrote this or signed off on it should be fired. They deleted the tweet within an hour. The next day, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, sent a tweet. Said he just met with the Turkish foreign minister, and they agreed to work together to push for a ceasefire for Israel. That's the next day. Once again, I denounced that tweet. I said, this is ridiculous. The word ceasefire, as you know, is code word. Look, the terrorists aren't ceasing anything. They will cease when they've murdered every Jew. That's their objective, is to kill everyone. When the U.S. State Department says ceasefire, what they are saying to Israel is, don't defend yourself. Don't go and defeat Hamas. Don't kill the terrorists. Just sit there helpless and let them kill innocent civilians. Again, Blinken, the State Department, deleted that tweet when I called him out within the hour. What did Tony Blinken do? Flew to Israel and demanded what he called a humanitarian pause, which I will commend the wordsmiths for coming up with a different word for ceasefire. And the position of the Biden administration seems to be, please stop trying to kill the terrorists. We're rooting for the bad guys, and you guys are too effective at killing them. It is infuriating. And by the way, they combine it with, they still want to send money to these guys. One of the very first things Joe Biden said is we need to send $100 million to Gaza. Gaza is controlled by Hamas. By the way, these leftists on college campuses, they talk about this as occupied territory. Look, Israel isn't in Gaza. Israel doesn't control Gaza. Israel left the Gaza Strip. Said, all right, you want it? It's yours. We're gone. The only thing we're going to do is put up a wall to make sure that lunatics who want to kill us don't come over and kill us. But the Palestinians control the Gaza Strip 100%. It is ruled by Hamas. Now, they live in misery and poverty. Why? Because they're a theocratic death cult that are motivated by one thing, raging hatred for Jews. And so the international community sends hundreds of millions of dollars in there for hospitals, for schools, for water pipes. What do? They take all the money and they use it to wage war. They take the water pipes, they rip them up, and they chop them into rockets to fire rockets at Israel because they'd rather murder Jews than provide water for Palestinian babies. That dynamic, you look at the college campuses where they're protesting, they don't know that. They don't know that. They don't care. And the Biden administration's consistent response is send money to Gaza anyway, even though we know it'll go to terrorists.
Let me circle back with you here. The book is Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. These are the entrails, really, of what's happened as a result of decades of indoctrination, brainwashing, leftism, Islamicism, and on and on. And you talk about this in the book. You go through the whole history of this and what we should do about it. The Squad, you can't accuse them of being white liberals.
Yeah.
They come into this country, some of them are first generation, some of them are second generation. Our border's wide open.
Yep.
People are coming into this country. We don't know who they are, by the millions. They caught some on the terrorist watch list, which means some terrorists got through. They caught some, but they're not going to catch them all.
Right.
That system's not perfect. You have a president of the United States that is arming the enemy, Iran. President of the United States that's telling Israel to stand down, even though they're fighting the enemy for us and them. You have a president of the United States that has the border wide open with drug cartels and coming in. And so my question to you is this, for after the break. Joe Biden and Blinken keep talking about their concern for the citizenry. Do they show any concern for the 100,000 people dying every year from fentanyl in the United States, the American citizenry? Do they show any concern about the citizenry in Iran that rose up to try and overthrow that regime and then all of a sudden the spigots turn back on when Trump leaves, and they've put them down and they're slaughtering their own people. They keep talking about their concern for the citizenry. Isn't that kind of what you're saying here? They twist the language, they use the language to promote an agenda which is, in fact, inhumane. I want your point on this as soon as we return.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.